Hello everyone, and this is BioPhoenix here, and today we're going to be doing the Q&A of 2022. So I don't think I really need to re-explain anything here since I already talked about that, and for those that have submitted questions, which of course I thank you very much for that. And I do think this is going to be a very fun one, but it's also going to be a pretty long one, because knowing me, I'm probably going to be all like long-winded on a lot of these questions, since this is not scripted, and I'm probably going to be going like, quite a bit, so, just do keep that in mind. But yes, anyways, without further ado, let's just get right to it. So the first one we got here is from Sweaty Couch, and he's asking about, like, how I do, like, a string of reviews. Which is a pretty good question to ask, even though I do think that it is one of those questions that can be really hard to condense it in a way that would, like, make sense, but I'll say it in the best I can and say that, when I first started doing, like, reviews, I started them when I was in, like, late high school, so I had a lot more time on my hands versus nowadays. And what I used to do is that after I finished a video, I wouldn't upload it right away, I would just, like, work on to the next video, then I would have, like, at least, like, 5 reviews like stored on my hard drive, and then I would just upload them slowly every once in a while. And the reason why I did that was a few reasons. For one, I never really liked the whole idea of like uploading like a bunch of videos like all at once or anything, because I always felt like I would like annoy people by like spamming videos in their like subscription feed or whatever. And two, I always just like working on ahead whenever I can, although lately it's been a little bit tougher to do that just because I haven't had as much free time and I've caught up since I've like been doing that. But somehow I can still manage to put out like maybe like 2 reviews a month maybe. It all really depends on the game, because I know like certain games do take me longer to get through, mostly the RPG ones, which I haven't done like a proper RPG review since like Girlancer 5 I think. So yeah, I do want to do more of those. It's just because they take up a lot more time, and usually whenever I want to play an RPG, I usually just want to just soak right into it and not have to think about anything else. But yeah, anyways though, yeah, that's pretty much like the best way I can explain it of how I used to like have a big string of reviews, is that I just used to work ahead all the time and not like put them out like immediately. And next up we got a question from Bio2, who is not me by the way, and funny enough, he asked me a bunch of questions about the Deception series. A very wise decision, I might add. So the first thing he said was, what do I think about the lead character Allura from the game Trapped? Or in Japanese, her name is Alicia or whatever. I mean, whichever one works. So what do I think about her? Well, I did read your complaint with her, and I kind of agree. She basically is just a damsel in distress. And I mean, if you really think about it, the game Trapped is almost like a retelling of the original game, but only that you play as a girl instead of like some ghost guy that you can't see yourself until the very end. And yeah, you're absolutely right that, whenever you do kill people and she's just like, being like, oh, this is such a horrible thing I just done, but then she just doesn't think much of it and still continues the job. Which, yeah, it doesn't really make much sense with the gameplay, but as again, I think it's mainly because of the mark on her arm that controls over her to do that, and then she just, like, has no mind of her own. I think that's what they're trying to implement, but it's still kind of dumb, It's kind of like with the third game as well, where they try to make this whole thing where it's all like, using traps is considered a curse, and the more you use them, you're gonna die. Which is also equally as dumb, so, when it comes to the stories in the Deception games, as much as I love the games, and as you know me, I love them a fuckload, when I look at those games overall, I mostly focus more on the gameplay, more so than the story. I mean, sure, the first 2 game stories, like, have interesting aspects to them that I do really like. For example, the first one was all about, like, you get betrayed, and then you get sent to a castle to die, but then you end up taking over the castle, and, just, like, trying to harvest souls for Satan, because, like, fucking crazy shit. And then the second game, you're basically like being manipulated by a race of characters called the TMD, and you have to do their dirty work, so to speak. So that one also does have its interesting aspects, but after that, the stories were not really particularly great, although they do have some interesting aspects, which, okay, for the third game, I will get into more of that when I reach your second question. And then as for like the fourth one, like Blood Ties, like that one I do think does have like some pretty cool aspects with the fact that you get to play as Satan's daughter, which I think is kind of cool. But okay, let me get back to the main question at hand. Like, what I think about Princess Allura as the character? Well, as much as I do like her design for that, I do think it is like a pretty unique looking like dress and like the arms and like the hat and all that. Like, I do think all that is really cool looking, but Outside of that, yeah, I can't really think of a whole lot of other things to really, like about her, compared to, other characters, in the series. Like, she's not a terrible character, but then again, the story itself also is kind of like that too, where it's not terrible, but it's just kind of it's okay. It's just one of those things where, like I've said before, it was more focused on the gameplay than the story. Like, the story was obviously an afterthought, and they just had to, throw something in there. And, for me, myself, I'm cool with that, but I know there would be some people that, that wouldn't like that. But as for the second question about what's my favorite protagonist in all the Deception games, it's pretty tough, and yeah, I would definitely say Millennia is highly up there for sure, just because not only do I love her design a lot, but I also like where the story of her character kind of took place, which I kind of already explained it, so I'm not going to repeat it here, but yeah, I do really like that a lot. But you know what? As much as I say that, the story in the third game isn't really that great, I actually think Reyna is actually a really good main character to have in a game like this. As again, I really love her design a lot, and secondly, she goes through, so much shit throughout the game that, not only do you, feel bad for her, but she also just has, a lot of motivation for you to, wanting to, kill some of these piece of shit characters. And for those that don't know, on the day of her birthday, she gets kidnapped, and she also gets, her whole family gets killed, right in front of her, and then she gets put to jail. And then, of course, she eventually escapes the jail, then ends up having to work with, some other, kid named Marco who tells her about the power of the traps. And yeah, the whole power of the traps thing, I think, is really where the story gets, really fucking stupid. But outside of that, though, she really is, a pretty developed character, even though her dialogue isn't the best, but it's at least a lot better than a lot of the other games if you think about it. But I also should mention that the main character in the fourth game, Lagrena, I think she's fucking awesome for the fact that she's just a straight up savage who just gives no fucks, so I do like that a lot. But yeah, as much as I love that though, I think I might say Reyna is my favorite protagonist in the series, even though the game's story in general isn't the greatest, but I think it has the best main character. But I would also say that Millennia is not far behind either. And next we have is Kiyoyami, who is asking about what makes a Growlancer game a Growlancer game. Well, I can definitely say that the biggest key thing would have to be, the art style from Satoshi Yorishihara. I think that really makes it, the most iconic thing about it. And I would also say having, the whole, turn-based, but yet, real-time thing, no, grid-based or anything, I think that also kind of makes it as well, because I do think that the one thing I love about the series is that all the battles usually feel pretty fast-paced, there's no, slow movement in it whatsoever. I'd probably say those two things are the biggest things that come to mind of what makes a Growlancer game, well, a Growlancer game, and, well, that's why I fucking love the game so much, and it really is a shame that we never got another one after the 6th game, which never got released over here. But I do eventually want to try out the Landgrisser games, although I did play a little bit of one of them on the Genesis without realizing it was one of those types of games. But I know it has a very different feel to it as well. But yeah, anyways, that's really all I get to say about that. Just a really awesome series that is still very underrated. Alright, next we have is one from Zakaja. I hope I pronounced that right. I don't think I did, but if I did not, I do apologize. So, I did look up the first thing that you said about Grant and Josie and Connor, and I couldn't find what the fuck it was all about, so unfortunately I can't answer that. As for the worst game I ever played, well, I could always just make the typical answer and say, Superman 64, or Bubsy 3D, or Carmageddon 64, or, any of, the usual shit, I could mention all those, and yeah, those would be pretty accurate as some of the worst games I ever played. And then, of course, there's also, the unlicensed shit, like Crazy Bus and Hong Kong 97. Yeah, but, if we, just without going into that, though, I probably would say the worst game, that I've played, in recent years would probably have to be Eternal Quest on PS2. Goddamn, I was not prepared for how awful that game really was. Holy shit. Talk about, the worst game in, so many different ways. I know I've done a whole review on it, so I won't repeat it here, but yeah, that is still the worst game to me in, many different ways, at least in recent years. I know it's also a game that, not many people talk about, and, well, probably for good reason. And then the final question is, are you currently in a relationship? And I could say, no, not at the moment. I mean, I've been in many of them over the years, but right now, nah. But I'll just keep that short, since I don't really want to go too much into that. Alright, and the next one comes from Kimmy, and they ask about what do I think about certain shows from the decade of, like, you know, like, buying, like, DVDs at the stores, or going to, like, websites to first encounter, like, animes and stuff. So the weird thing with me of anime was that, like, I never really bought, like, the DVDs back in the day because, you know, we were fucking poor, so we weren't able to, like, afford that shit. Like, it took me a long-ass fucking time just to get fucking video games, let alone, like, buying, like, movies of, like, you know, like, live-action movies or even, like, you know, anime shit. Which also, anime shit back then was not cheap, considering that they used to put out those, like, volume, like, 1, 2, and 3 DVDs, and they would always be, like, really fucking expensive. So how we watched movies back then was that not only we just watched them on TV, but we also rented a lot of them. And yeah, we didn't really rent a lot of anime movies back then, unless it was like, you know, like a couple episodes of like Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh, or, you know, we rented out some of the Ghibli Studio stuff, like Kiki's Delivery Service, which was one of the first anime movies I remember watching, and then there was also Spirited Away. Yeah, unfortunately, I never rented any of, like, the cool, hyper-violent shit, like Fist of the North Star, because I didn't know about it back at that time. And plus, I don't know if my parents would let me, like, rent something like that back then, if I think about it. But when it came to watching, like, animes, like, on, like, the web, that was mostly, like, the time where I, like, watched, like, all of, like, the good shit. Like, all the shit that everyone knew about, you know, stuff like Akira, you know, Vampire Hunter D, you know, like Outlaw Star, Magic Knight Rayearth, and like all that type of good shit. Like, I watched all of that, like, through online, and I actually caught up with, like, a lot of good shit, too. And then, you know, other ones, too, like, you know, like Rurouni Kenshin, and, you know, Cowboy Bebop, Trigun. I watched all of that shit throughout, like, the mid to late 2000s, like, online, because, you know, like, fucking cable didn't give you shit. Well, I mean, they did have some good shit on there, but, you know, I could watch all this shit anytime I wanted. I didn't need no fucking Toonami. So that was, like, the majority of, like, my anime watching days was during that time, because not only was I much younger, and I was in, like, you know, like, middle school to, like, early high school and all that, but it was also, you know, I was able to watch some of, like, the really cool stuff that a lot of people knew about that, you know, I never saw back, like, when it came out, because I either didn't get the channel it was on, or it was on, like, really late at night, and I just wasn't able to stay up. But yeah, there's like a ton of other ones I could have mentioned too. Like when I mentioned about Fist of the North Star, yeah, that was another one I watched during that time as well. And then there was Ninja Scrolls, which I know I've talked about, like how I discovered that anime was like pretty random and kind of funny. In case of those that don't remember, it's because I was looking up stuff on the Deception series and how the game, like the second game is called Kagero Deception 2. And as you know, in the anime Ninja Scrolls, there's a character named Kagero, so I kept seeing pictures of it and I was like, what is this? And then I found out what it was, and I watched it without knowing anything else outside of that, and it blew my mind, and I fucking loved it. So I can go on and on about that, but I'll just leave it here and say that, yeah, those are basically, like, the majority of stuff that I was watching in those early days of, like, the internet with, like, anime shit. And next we have is Canary Queen, and they've asked about playing RuneScape, and yes, I used to play RuneScape back in the day. I used to play it from 2006, or no, it was 2007. Oh yes, the good old days of RuneScape. In fact, if I remember right, I think my account that I made back then was Chaotix 55, because, you know, I named it after, like, Team Chaotix from Sonic, so, yeah, I think that's what I named my dude, and I actually remember getting pretty high up in the levels there. I forget what exactly my number was. I think I was, like, level, like, 67 or 68. Yeah, unfortunately I never reached it to 69, or maybe I did, but I just don't remember. But I know I was in, like, the late 60s, though, and then I just kind of stopped playing, and then I was like, I kind of want to just play other shit. And plus, you know, playing an MMO like that just takes a lot of time, and I just, like, yeah, I'd rather just go out and beat, like, a bunch of random-ass games and get more experience like that, rather than just playing an MMO again. But I'm not gonna lie, though, even though I don't really like MMOs, and I'm probably never gonna play RuneScape ever again, I'll never forget the memories I have with it, and also, like, hearing all, like, the iconic music, like Autumn Voyage. Like, man, that shit is fucking lit. So I do have some fond memories of it for that. It was one of the few MMOs that I ever got into, and it was the one that I actually liked the most just because, you know, not only was it free, you didn't have to pay a shitty monthly subscription just to play the base game, you know, fucking World of War crap. But I also liked that it was one of those games that you can kind of be like a jack of all trades sort of thing, for that you didn't have to be like, oh, I want to be a wizard or be a knight or whatever. Like, you can literally be like all the classes at once. Like, it was kind of cool like that. But alright, that's enough I'll say about RuneScape for now. So as for the second, about books or light novels, you know, I don't think I've ever actually, like, legit read a light novel. Like, if I remember right, like, a light novel is, like, you know, like one of those, like, Japanese books where it's just like a regular novel but with pictures in it, right? And it has, like, the anime artwork on it. Like, that's what you mean by light novel. Because, yeah, I don't think I've ever actually read one. So, yeah, I am more of a manga person. For that, I have at least read, like, a few manga books before, and I am continuing to reading a lot more, because I have been doing a lot reading more, and I know there are some questions that do talk about reading, so I'll get more into that later, but, yeah, I would like to try out reading a light novel if I found something that was interesting enough. Alright, the next one we got is a troll question from one of my good friends, Ignacio, and he's asking me about playing the White Day at Labyrinth Name School on PS4 and get all the trophies and platinum and all this type of shit. And yes, no joke, that game actually does have a platinum trophy where in order to get it, you have to, like, beat the game on the hardest difficulty, like, 10 times, which is, like, fucking stupid. But then again, honestly, that game fucking sucks. Like, I just really don't like White Day, which is a shame because I like the idea of it. Well, the idea of, like, just being trapped in a school. It's basically like the game Eru, but only that White Day is just fucking awful. Like, I just hate the way how they, like, make you, like, go through different, like, bullshit just to get, like, one fucking item. Like, you can't just, like, you can't cut corners in that game. Like, they made you, like, having to, like, you know, go through shit in the way they want you to, and it's fucking stupid. Plus, it's just really tedious to, like, get around the place, and there's, like, not enough hiding spots, and, yeah, I don't know. I don't want to turn this into a whole rant video, but, yeah, like, is this what you wanted, Ignacio? You wanted me to fucking rant about stupid goddamn White Day again? Well, there you go. That's all you're getting. So fuck you! Obviously, I'm kidding. I'm actually good friends with him, but I know he does like to make fun of me for the fact that, like, I never beat White Day, and I just think it's just such a shitty horror game. Honestly, I actually think it's worse than Rule of Rose. Like, no joke. I think it's that bad. Because at least Rule of Rose, I finished it, like, from beginning to end. And yeah, I may have not been a fan of it, but, you know, at least it did have some interesting things I could say about it. But White Day, however, like, it just fucking sucks. Okay, so the next question here actually was sent to me on Facebook, and it's actually from my good friend Derek the Completionist, the one that has the awesome profile picture of Lenneth from Valkyrie Profile. I'm sure you've seen him around. He's a really good dude. So he asked me about what makes you think of, like, this scene, and the picture that I'm showing here is of I'll Never Forgive the Japanese, which happens to be from JoJo, which is pretty funny. So, okay. There's a couple ways you could take this. And there are two things that do come to my mind straight away. There's the fucked up answer, and then there's the kinda sorta fucked up answer, but it's actually one that I actually do kinda like talking about because it's kinda interesting. So the fucked up answer happens to be the fucked up anime that I reviewed back in 2019 called Midori, which, yeah, don't watch that shit. And as for the not so fucked up answer, but is, like, you know, one that I actually like talking about, would probably have to be Barefoot Gen, which, yeah, like I said, it's a pretty fucked up movie, but it's actually a really good fucking movie though, unlike the other one. The other one just fucking sucks. So when I reviewed Barefoot Gen, I did kind of talk about how I discovered it, which was kind of funny because I watched it on YouTube in, like, the 10-minute, like, multi-parts that people re-uploaded to YouTube at the time, and then there was that one scene that played that, like, scared the shit out of me. And, yeah, you know what? It's still hard to fucking watch, even to this day, even though it is, like, super incredibly well animated, but it's like, goddamn, like, the fact that someone actually took their time to animate that is just fucking, like, craziness. Well, I guess you can say that about, like, my second answer there, but, you know, only that at least this one actually is, like, a good-ass fucking movie with a good-ass story in it and good-ass characterization, where the other one, it just had, like, good-ass animation, but, like, shit everything else. So yeah, I'll never forgive him for scarring me for life from that shit. Alright, next up we got one from Fred Spade, and the first one was about what the most recent anime that I got into. Well, I don't watch a lot of modern animes. I mean, I watched a few, but I find I'm very picky with a lot of them because there is like so many of them that just look the fucking same, or they just have like the same old shit that I just don't like. Like it's always like, oh, the high school shit, or oh, look, it's like another shonen anime, like it's gonna be like the next Attack on Titan or the next like Sword Art Online and blah 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 blah. You know, and of course, you know, like there are some good ones that do like become generally good surprises, and I'm glad for that. So, and those are the ones I do try to like gravitate towards. It's just, you know, sometimes I just prefer watching older shit. So anyways, so as for like the more recent ones that I love watching, I would say like Tiger and Bunny is fucking awesome. I actually watched that like a few months ago, and I like fucking loved it. It might actually be one of my favorite modern animes, to be honest. I just love like the characters in it. And plus, you know what? It's a superhero anime that does it better than My Hero fucking Academia or whatever the fuck. Also, another one I love, although I don't know if you want to count this as modern, because, you know, it is like a remake of an old property, but that was the remake of Bastard. I think that was like really awesome shit. Love that. But if you're going to be counting about another modern one that I really love, I would say Opera Ranman is really fucking awesome too. It's basically like a racing anime, kind of like Redline, but, you know, but it takes place in like the olden days, and like a guy has to like make his own car. Very, very interesting shit, and it's just a lot of fun. Also, one mainstream anime that I will briefly mention here is that, surprisingly, I actually do really like Demon Slayer, believe it or not. Like, out of all, like, the mainstream shit animes out there, I think Demon Slayer is, like, the best one. Even though I know it's not like there's that much of a competition here. I mean, what else does it have up to? Like I said, Attack on Titan, My Hero Academia, you know, Sword Art Online, and, what was that other one? Fucking Black Clover, and then there's, like, Baruto and all that type of shit. Like, all of that shit compared to Demon Slayer is, like, practically nothing to me, so, yeah. Those are just some examples of some modern animes that I actually do really like, and I think are worth checking out for, you know, if you're like me and you're just, like, sick and tired of all, like, the mainstream garbage that gets thrown out there. Alright, and as for the second one, well, sorry to disappoint you, but I'm not the coolest person on YouTube. I mean, I like to think I'm, like, okay, but, you know, being the coolest? Nah. Like, I'm just some, like, random-ass asshole who's just, like, on the internet. Random-ass asshole. That just sounded so fucking weird the way I always said that, but anyways, yeah, that's what I am. I'm a random-ass asshole. Like, that's all you need to know. And as for, can you have another 20 fucking questions or some shit? Well, yeah, I mean, you can ask me questions anytime you want. It just, you know, just for the sake of this video, I just wanted to keep it just 3 at once, just so people weren't asking, like, a shit ton at once. Because I have a feeling this video is going to get pretty fucking long. I mean, I'm already at, like, 20 minutes or some shit. Alright, next is Cell Nicer, and what is my top 10 films of all time? Man, that is hard. But I think I can give you a rough idea. So I definitely would say, like, Terminator 2 would be up there. I would also say Jurassic Park would be up there. I would also say 1 Hour Photo is up there. That's a really fucking underrated movie from Robin Williams, by the way. You know, like some of the Rocky films are up there. Same thing with Rambo as well. You know, Clint Eastwood with Dirty Harry, that's also an awesome one. And then, you know, if I want to throw in, like, a comedy or something, I'd probably say, like, National Lampoon's A Christmas Vacation. That's a fucking great movie, and also it's, like, one of my all-time favorite Christmas movies. And then there's also The Hunt for Red October. That's also a really great movie. Oh, and speaking of Sean Connery, I think I have to at least put, like, one James Bond movie. I would probably say You Only Live Twice might be my favorite, but I don't know, man. Picking my favorite Bond movie is fucking tough, but that one's definitely up there for sure. Or even From Russia with Love, like, holy shit. Like, yeah, just asking me about a Bond question would also be fucking hard as well, and I'm just trying to do this with mentioning movies in general. And I think I'm at 9 films now. I'm probably miscounting, probably, but if I ever were to mention, like, one more film that I just really love a whole lot, I probably would say, like, I don't know, maybe The Crow, you know, with Brandon Lee. I think that's a great, like, revenge movie. Yeah, you know, the plot is nothing, like, super crazy or, like, unique or anything, but it's just a really awesome, kick-ass film. So yeah, I think that kind of gives you a general idea what some of my, like, top 10 movies of all time would be. Obviously, there's a lot more I could mention. Like, there's plenty of others I didn't even mention. Like, I didn't even mention a freaking Godzilla movie, for God's sakes. So, yeah, like I said, I could go on, but I think that kind of gives you an idea of what I love. And as for my favorite grunt suit from the Mobile Suit Gundam series, well, I definitely would say that the Zaku's are my favorite. I always thought they looked fucking cool. Also, I can't remember if this is considered like a grunt or not, but I always thought they kind of were, and that was the Zagok or whatever. I don't know how it's actually said, but I know, like, from what I'm looking up on the page here, it says MSM07ZGOK. Yeah, Zagok. I just like calling it that. But yeah, it's the one that can go underwater. I always thought that one looks really cool. In fact, I actually got a red version figure of it that I actually put together, like a Gunpla thing. So yeah, so for that reason, yeah, I definitely do like that one. And alright, as for my fascination with the cyberpunk genre, well, I just like the whole, like, setting of it. Like, I like the whole, like, future aspect and some of, like, the, you know, the really cool details that they make on, like, certain backgrounds. Like, you know, if you look at, like, a lot of, like, really, like, old school, like, cyberpunk artwork, like, there's a lot of, like, really cool details to it that I just really love a whole lot. Plus, unlike a lot of other, like, future aspects to it, like, a lot of cyberpunk settings usually tend to be, like, really colorful, so it doesn't look, like, super dull and gray looking, so I also do appreciate that as well. And plus, there's been a lot of really cool, like, movies and animes and games that have had, like, cyberpunk aspects to them. Like, you know, for example, you got Blade Runner, and then you got, like, Hardware. Like, I think that's also, like, cyberpunky, too. And for anime, you have Cyber City Audio, which is just really awesome and kick-ass. And then, of course, you got one of my all-time favorites, being Bubblegum Crisis. And as for video games, well, there's a shit ton of them out there, but yeah, there's a lot of really cool ones. Alright, next up is from Randolph, and he asks about, do I like RPG Maker games? I played a few of them back then. I haven't played a lot recently, but the very first one that I recall playing, believe it or not, was actually a Sonic fan game called Chaotix of Tomorrow. Yeah, it was a RPG Maker game that was made with Team Chaotix, where you get to use Espio, Vector, and Charmy, and you gotta, like, wander around the world. It was actually a pretty cool little game, I will say. And it's actually one that I've actually wanted to, like, review on the channel, like, ages ago, but unfortunately I wasn't able to get gameplay footage of because it was one of those games where you can only go in full screen, and I wasn't able to see if my shit was recording anything, and it wasn't, and then I realized, I'm like, well, fuck, like, I just wasted all that time for nothing then, and that kind of pissed me off. And that's kind of partly the reason why I kind of prefer to record things on, like, window mode, just to make sure I didn't, like, fuck up anything. But yeah, that was the very first RPG Maker game that I recall playing. Of course, there's, like, other ones I can mention out there. Like, I know there's one called, Emperors of a Dark Lord, I think? No, Chronicles of a Dark Lord. That's what it was. I know that one's kind of cool, because you get to play as, like, some, like, bad guy, and you gotta take out, like, the good guys. It's kind of a unique take like that. But yeah, I haven't played one, like, anytime recently, though. I'm sure there are other good ones out there, it's just, you know, there's just so many of them, and sometimes it can be a little overwhelming, I think. And plus, you know, I feel like with a lot of RPG Maker games, like, as someone that actually did try to make an RPG once, I can say that there is actually some limitations of what you can do, unless you have, like, super mass, like, hacker programming skills, which I don't. And as for the second one, that's, what Japan-only game do you want to seek an English localization? Well, that'd basically be like any fucking game that I mentioned in my Games I Wish Got Fan Translated series. Like, any number of those ever got one, I would buy that shit day one. In fact, I actually did that with, oh, what the fuck was that game on PS2? The one that was, like, published by Atlas, and it was like a dungeon crawling RPG. Kowloon High School Chronicles? Yeah, that one. I actually bought that day one on the Switch, and, yeah, really cool game, but I kinda got stuck, and it's one of those games where you definitely need a guide for, and all that, but I've talked about that a bunch of times, but yeah, like, I really wish more shit like that would actually happen, because that's the kind of shit that I want to buy. But if I had to name at least, like, one game that I wish got, like, English localized, like, for real, like, I probably might say, Desperia on the Dreamcast. Like, I think that game just looks really fucking cool, and I actually know quite a bit about the story about it now, and it's pretty interesting. And as again, it's also another cyberpunk setting game, so yeah, kind of ironic there, right? And as for the last one, what do I do in real life? Well, in real life, I try not to die. Okay, that's probably not the answer that you want. I mean, you probably are, like, wondering about, like, what do I do, like, you know, like, for a living, right? Well, I'll be honest and say that normally I don't really like talking about these sorts of things, so I feel like a lot of people are like super judgmental on it. Not saying that you or any of my subscribers are like that, but there's a lot of people that think like, oh, if you have this type of job, you must be like this and blah 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 blah. Like, for example, like you could be like a fucking brain surgeon and then it'd be like, oh, you're gonna be one of those guys who can actually afford buying like a fucking Neo Geo or some shit. Or you're just one of those guys who just works at, like, you know, like a minimum wage job, just barely getting by, you know, and people will just call you, like, fucking poor ass and shit. And for me personally, like, I don't give a shit what you are, as long as you're not, like, a fucking douchebag. I don't care. You can be, like, either of those two fucking job assets that I mentioned, and I don't care. Like, doesn't matter, as long as we're all, like, you know, enjoying the shit that we love, and the discussion here with, like, video games, animes, movies, and books, and whatever the fuck else. But, okay, let's get back to the question here, because I'm kind of, like, ranting about, like, nothing now. But, yeah, normally, yeah, I don't really like talking about this type of stuff, just because I just don't think it's super necessary or whatever. But if you really must know, I'm actually doing a cleaning job at the moment, and I'm actually trying to do a sewing job later on. That's what I really want to do, because I want to make, like, costumes for people and clothing and whatnot. And besides, people need clothes, because, you know, if you don't have clothes, then, like, you're gonna be running around the world butt naked, and, you know, and that's like not a thing. So yeah, we don't live in the Neanderthal times anymore, so yeah, there you go. That's kind of like what I want to do. That's the game plan. Alright, next up is Velostation, and he asks about what book would I love to see get fan translated or translated in some way. Well, there's a couple I can think of off the top of my head. I mean, when it comes to novels, and yeah, I think it does have a manga version as well, but it's Taito Monogatari, or also known as, you know, the OVA Do Megaopolis. Like, the book for that, I would fucking love to read that book, because it sounds really awesome and kick-ass, but unfortunately there's, like, no English way to read it, which sucks. And it's kind of weird that it has never gotten one, because apparently that book, like, sold, like, a shit ton in Japan, so you think they would have carried it over here, but I guess not. But yeah, that one I definitely would love to read one day. And then another one I would also love to read too is the original story of Ariel. You know, that one with like the giant like female robot that came out before Xenosaga? Yeah, that like obscure OVA that I reviewed. Yeah, I would love to read the story to that too, because it sounded very interesting as well. As for the second one, what flawed game, like, would you love to deserve like a remake or update the most? There's quite a lot that can fit into this one, because I do think there's a lot of really cool games out there that do have, like, really cool ideas, but unfortunately, like, you know, they just didn't turn out as good as they could have been. For an example, that game, Mazurna Falls on PS1 that I've reviewed, like, I think that game, like, should have like, a remake of some sort, because I think it has some really cool, like, ideas, and I think, like, in today's standards, it could actually, like, do well today, given that, you know, open world games are, like, the shit, apparently. Also, it's all, like, you know, American culture, and it's all about, like, nostalgia of, like, the 90s and shit, and I don't know, they can make it sort of like Stranger Things or something, I don't know. Like, I think it can do something like that, and it would be kind of cool. Also, yet another PS1 game that I reviewed before, called Enigma, from the company Koei. Yeah, back when Koei used to do a lot of, like, random-ass, like, video games. This is the one that was kind of like a third-person action game with, like, pre-rendered background. Sort of like a survival horror, but of course it didn't have, like, the horror theme to it. It was kind of like more of, like, an Indiana Jones going to exotic locations sort of thing. So it was really cool like that. The game was not bad, but it did have some pretty big flaws in it that I wasn't a fan of, which was unfortunate. But aside from that, I thought it was somewhat enjoyable, and I think that's a game that definitely needs a remake. I would love to see Koei, like, bring that back in some way. I think that would be really awesome. Or shit, speaking of Koei, just bring back Nanatsu no Haiken. Although that game is not, like, deeply flawed. Like, I still like it for what it is, but that's, like, another, like, little series that they had that I would love to see them do another one of. Like, as much as I like the Dynasty Warrior games, I would like to see them bring back, like, more, like, old, obscure shit that I just never, like, see them do anymore. And as for the last one about what characters not in Mugen would you love to see get made, or if there's one that exists already, what better version of it is, well, I'll just name one that I know for a fact is, like, not in the game. So, you know, there are, like, some of them that I'm actually surprised actually did get made. Like, I was surprised someone made fucking Yuri from Shadow Hearts. Like, that made me, like, shit my pants. And it was actually a pretty good version of it, too. But for an example, like, I would love to see, like, some of the Deception characters get put into the game, make their moveset kind of similar to what they did with, you know, Warriors All-Stars. I think that would be fucking awesome. I would love that. I'd love to see some Growlancer characters get thrown in there as well, and then, you know, maybe I'd put some of the other Shadow Hearts characters, like, outside of Yuri, like, maybe put, like, Alice and Karen and, you know, whoever else, you know, like, put them in there. Also gotta throw in some Bubblegum Crisis characters, because I don't know if any of them got made into the game. I'm not sure. And one last one that I will mention is that I think it would be cool to see more, like, Yu-Gi-Oh! Characters of, like, the monster cards that are not, like, the typical ones get made. Like, for example, like, I would love to see, like, someone make, like, Skull Knight in Mugen, or, like, Armageddon Knight, or Celtic Guardian. Well, I think Celtic Guardian might have gotten made, but I'm not 100% sure. I mean, he is pretty iconic enough, so there is that. But, you know, like, there's a lot of, like, other, like, really cool, like, old-school, you know, Yu-Gi-Oh! Monster cards that I would love to see get made into, like, you know, like, Mugen, and then we can make, like, Yu-Gi-Oh! Fighting game or something. Like, that'd be awesome. And next up, it's from Meltamaster, and the first one that he asks is about my favorite gaming experience with buddies. Well, there's quite a lot of them that I've had over the years, and it's hard to just pick one, because, you know, that makes it sound like I'm picking, like, my favorite friends over the others, which I'm not, but, man, there's a lot. Like, I remember there's been times where, like, me and my friends would play, like, Super Smash Bros. Melee, and, you know, Mario Kart Double Dash, and then there's been times where we've played, like, some of the James Bond games, and then another one I could also name is that we used to play a bit of, like, the older, like, Call of Duty games, like, playing, like, Nazi zombies in, World at War. Like, that was some good-ass shit. Like, say what you will about the Call of Duty series now, but, I'll never, trade away those memories I played on, like, on maps like Verrucht and Duriz and shit. And also, speaking of RuneScape that I mentioned earlier, yeah, there's been some times that I played RuneScape with my friends. In fact, I remember one time I actually had, like, two computers, like, right beside each other. Although one of them was, like, super shitty, so, like, I wasn't able to do a lot with it, though. But it was decent enough to play RuneScape. And, yeah, me and my friends would just, like, play, like, right beside each other, so we didn't have to, like, you know, like, type into each other. It was pretty great. And one quick thing I will mention about it that did make me laugh was I remember one time my two friends were both playing like RuneScape side by side each other. I was playing some other game and we were just like talking to each other. And I remember one of my friends like got up and went to the bathroom, and they were like right beside each other in the game. So when he went to the bathroom, the other guy ended up like trading in like all his fucking like money to like the other guy. So he basically like stole like all of his shit, and it was so funny. So yeah, that kind of gives you a good idea of, like, some, like, shit that I played with friends all the time, and, you know, like I always say, like, I would never trade those memories away, no matter if the game is something that I'm going to be into or not nowadays. Now, as for the second question about what would I give to the current YouTube generation that is trying to be more part of a community, well, the easiest way to put it is that, be yourself, don't be a fuckhead, and of course, you know, like, I would say, like, just try to be friendly with people, and don't just do it for yourself, like, just try to, like, get people to watch your channel. Just be, like, a decent person, kind of watch other people's, like, comment on their stuff, but don't just say, like, good video, and, like, just be into all that. No, like, I actually do try to, like, comment, like, something, like, actually put some personality into it. And then after that, you know, like, as you start to get to know people, you will kind of be a part of, like, a community, you know? It's kind of like how I met people with, you know, like, Boss and Burf and Majority and Turbozone and all those guys. Like, I met those guys because I found their videos and I would, like, comment on them, and you know, we'd get to know each other, and, you know, we had some good-ass times. But yeah, I would just say, you know, let's try to, like, reach out to people in a non, like, preachy way, and you'll be fine. And lastly, there is, what are some new wave of British heavy metal and speed metal bands am I into? Well, there's quite a lot that I do like. Like, if I had to name, like, some examples, like, you know, I would say, like, you know, bands like Saxon, and, you know, there's Satan, which is also really good. And then there's, Angel Witch is pretty cool. And then there's also a pretty obscure one I know called, Jaguar. They have an album called Power Games. Really awesome shit. And then there's Grim Reaper, Tank, Blitzkrieg, like, that's just to name a few. Like, I think all those are, like, really good shit that I can mention that are not, like, you know, the typical ones, like Iron Maiden and all that. I mean, yeah, I love Iron Maiden, of course, but, you know, I'm talking about, like, some of the lesser-known ones. Now, when it comes to speed metal, I'm not gonna lie, but when it comes to some of these, like, weird subgenres of metal, I'm not really good at categorizing them, because I know if I say something is this, someone's gonna be like, oh, well, that's not, like, speed metal, like, you don't know shit shit, blah blah blah, you know? So yeah, like, I try not to, like, look too much into those genres. Like, usually I'll just be like, oh, that's, like, heavy metal, black metal, power metal, like, whatever the shit. You know, the easier ones to narrow down. But when it comes to, like this, like I said, speed metal, like, I see a couple bands here that are listed as speed metal, and there's some that I'm like, is that really considered them? Like, for an example, like, the band Accept apparently is on the list, and I do really like that band, but I never really considered them to be speed metal, but, I mean, hey, you know, I love them. They're great. Alright, next up is, Cell97 Red Guilties, and he asked, what are my top favorite video game franchises? Well, I mean, there's a lot of them that I've been talking about within this video, like, you know, like, Deception, Shadow Hearts would definitely be up there. You know, then there's also, you know, shit like Donkey Kong Country is up there. Like, you know, I've kind of done, like, videos like that. I know I did one video response where I was talking about my favorite games of all time. I mean, a lot of the franchises of those I would definitely consider to be up there. You know, like, also, you know, like Mario, Zelda, you know, Streets of Rage, you know, all that type of good shit. Yeah, I would say some of those would be up there. And what is the anime that I watch the most? I mean, I don't know, like, the exact number that I would say I've rewatched an anime, but, like, if we're talking about, like, straight-up, like, anime movies, I would say maybe, like, the 2 Vampire Hunter D movies. I watch those, like, quite a lot. And then there's also the Cowboy Bebop, the movie, I've rewatched a few times, because it's also really fucking great. And, you know, some of the Ghibli Studio stuff I've rewatched multiple times, too. But as for, like, straight-up, like, animes, though, I know Rurouni Kenshin I've rewatched, like, 3 times, weirdly enough. As long as it is, I've watched it 3 times, and I loved it each time as I did. And then there's also Yu-Gi-Oh! Like, you know, Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters, like, that shit I've rewatched a lot, too, just for, like, nostalgia's sake. And you know what? I still enjoy the fuck out of it. I know it's dumb as shit, but I love it. Yeah, those are, like, the 2, like, anime series that I have, like, rewatched the most that I can think of off the top of my hand, because, yeah, I mean, I know, like, one I definitely would consider rewatching more times if I, like, watched it with other people would be, like, Monster. Like, I would love to rewatch that one again. So, I don't know, maybe if you ask me this question, like, 5 years from now, that might also be on the list, too. And what are my 3 favorite, video game consoles? Well, I would say the SNES, because, you know, it was one of the very first consoles I ever had, and I love a lot of, like, the variety that it has. Then I would also say PS1, as again, grew up with it, have a lot of, really interesting games on it. In fact, I'm still discovering, like, Japan-only games on it, which is crazy. And then after that, oh man, this is tough. You know what? I'll go with PS2. Like, I think PS2, as again, has a huge variety of games. As again, I still do discover games on it, because it has, like, a shit ton, and there's just so much great shit on there. Some of my favorite games of all time are on that system. But, yeah, I would say those are, like, you know, my top 3 favorites for sure. But then again, my order could change, like, around, like, any time, because, you know, there's other ones I would love to mention up there. Like, I almost picked the GameCube as well. That's another, like, really good pick. Alright, next is, Pierre Finch, and they've asked about what is my most unexplored game console, or a piece of electronic history that I'd like to know more about. There's a few I can think of for this. I would say the Wonder Swan and the Wonder Swan Color definitely would be up there. I've always wanted to, like, kind of try out some of those, because they do have some pretty interesting games from what I've seen. There's also the FM Towns. I haven't really fucked with that too much, although I know there's a lot of games that are on that are also on the PC98, but I think it does have a couple exclusives, but I'm not 100% sure on how many though, but I guess that would be another one. And another one, and this one might be for the best that I haven't really discovered that much, and that's the Philips CDI. Of course, you know, I've looked up, like, what games are on it, like, I know about that, but I never actually, like, played one, because the emulation for it is, like, kind of awful, and it still kind of is, too, if I'm not mistaken, so, because, you know, I don't really look it up that much, and honestly, I don't see a lot of big demand for it. And one last one that I'll mention, and this is a really weird one, and that happens to be the Watara Supervision, released in 1992. Yeah, doesn't it just look lovely? Kind of looks like a mixture between, like, the original Game Boy mixed with a Game Boy Advance SP. Maybe that's where they got the idea from it from. Now, as for the second one, if given unlimited resources to make a project, what would you do? You know, when I first read this question, like, when I got this, I was kind of like, you know, this kind of makes it sound like a, you know, like if I had to make my own company, and you know what I would do? I'd make a company similar to Working Design where I just like localize and translate all these like weird Japanese games and, you know, and all this type of like cool shit. But of course, you know, I wouldn't like, you know, do like the type of shit that they would do where making the game harder or anything like that. But, you know, like same kind of concept. And then of course, you know, if this was like the type of company that we would like, you know, like put out like physical media of these games, of course, you know, I would try to like make like the physical packaging look cool, maybe put some like, you know, shiny shit on the cover or anything like that, or make like a nice reverse cover, you know, like just kind of cool shit like that. Like that would be the kind of thing that I would do if I had something like that. But then I reread this question and realized, oh wait, you mean like what would I do for our own video game, huh? Well, I know one idea that's always crossed in my mind was that I would love to make, like, a really awesome, like, kick-ass, like, RPG with just some of the idea concepts I have in my head, and of course make it have, like, PC98 style graphics or something, or if not that, then at least just some sort of, like, you know, nice, like, anime art style or something. I don't know, like, I would just love to do something like that. Also, another interesting idea I came up with was to make a Donkey Kong Country style platformer, but with not being like an animal or something. Or maybe it could be, but something a little more unique. But yeah, I don't know. Like, I think something like that would be really cool as well. So yeah, nothing like super huge, I know. Like, I'm not making some like open world game or anything. But you know, I would just make like just like simple stuff like that. Well, at least a Donkey Kong Country game would be kind of simple. The RPG, however, yeah, not really. And finally, what's my favorite ice cream flavor? Well, I can definitely say, like, you know, typically I would say, like, you know, cookies and cream is great, but as much as I love that, I actually haven't ate cookies and cream ice cream in a while. The one I've actually really started to liking a lot is Heavenly Hash. Yeah, Heavenly Hash is great. In fact, I think I remember in a video I talked about how I used to eat, like, Heavenly Hash ice cream, and I used to think of that fucking Paramount logo. Yeah, I just reminded that now. But yeah, outside of those two, you know, like, usually the ones that are mixed with, like, the different chocolate bars are good, like, the Kit Kat ice cream is good, the Rolo ice cream is really good. But, you know, I think those are kind of cheating, though, because, like I said, like, if you like those ice cream bars, you're probably gonna like the ice cream, I'm sure. Alright, as for, Terry309, the first one he says is, what's my favorite figure in my collection? This one's kind of tough. Even though I don't have, like, a lot of figures in my collection, I do have some, and there are definitely some really awesome ones that I really do love, but it's hard to pick, like, one single favorite. But if I had to pick one, well, maybe, like, the Galletmon from Digimon, or, you know, he was also called Dukemon. Like, I think, that figure that I have of him, like, I really do like it a lot, because not only is he, like, my favorite-looking Digimon, but also that figure was given to me by a really good friend of mine, so I do kind of cherish it like that. And another one that I also do really like that I will mention here is the, Grizzly Gundam from G Gundam, aka the Canada Gundam. Yeah, I actually have a figure of him for that. Not only do I really love G Gundam, but also because, as you know, I'm from Canada, and that was, like, my country representation in that anime, so fuck yeah. So yeah, that's another one that I do really like as well. In fact, I would love to get a model kit of that, like, from Gunpla, but I don't think it's ever gonna happen, because I don't think they make any, like, G Gundam ones, or if they do, I think it's only just, Burning Gundam, which, you know, I would love to get too one day. But still, I would love to get more, like, G Gundam, Gunpla figures, though, and put them together. Like, I think that'd be fucking awesome. Although I know some of them would be kind of hard, because some of them do have some very, like, weird designs that would be hard to put together. But, I mean, hey, it would be challenging, it would be kind of fun. Alright, if I had to pick one game from my collection currently not up for sale, and if I were to sell it, which would it be? Well, as you all know, I've sold quite a lot of games from my collection over the years. Like, definitely the biggest one that I sold was my copy of Match Night Ray Earth on the Sega Saturn. That one I was actually, like, you know, I was thinking about not selling it, but then I was like, fuck it, might as well, right? Well, there's still other games that I still have that are also, like, pretty valuable as well that are not up for sale yet. But the one that definitely comes to mind is Haunting Ground on PS2. Yeah, I actually still own a copy of it, and here's the thing with that game. I love it, and it was a game that I've always wanted to play back in the day, but I never did. In fact, I actually saw a used copy of it years ago for, like, really cheap, and I didn't get it because I was like, oh, it'll be back there next time, and it wasn't. Yeah, well, of course, you know, this was back in the day before people, like, knew that, like, these games were gonna be fucking worth something. But yes, I think Haunting Ground is a game that, like, I probably would sell it, like, out of all the ones that I have, because it is a pretty valuable game, and, you know, I can always just emulate it, and it does emulate pretty damn well from what I played, although you do have to tinker with a couple things, but it's not too confusing. Also, it's not a game that I grew up with, although it is a game that I knew about growing up, but I just never played it growing up, you know? So it doesn't have that same, like, nostalgic attachment or anything. Also, it wasn't a game that, like, you know, made, like, a huge impact on me. It was just a game that I just really enjoyed and that I thought was just really awesome for PS2 horror games, and I almost like it just as much as Fatal Frame 2, so... You know, like, it's really good shit, but yeah. Like, I probably would sell it eventually, but probably not anytime soon at the moment. Alright, and finally he asks is, what is the worst Mario game I ever played? This one, okay, this is one you could definitely take the easy way out and just say, oh, fucking, Mario's missing, Mario's Time Machine, Mario on Philips CDI, Hotel Mario, Mario teaches typing, you can say all of that, but nah, I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna take things the hard way, because I like it hard. I know someone's gonna take that out of context, but yeah, you know what I mean. Okay, but yes, what is the worst Mario game I ever played? So... this one, as again, it's pretty tough, because even the worst Mario game, at least for count of, like, you know, the non-easy choices, I don't think there's a single, like, awful Mario game. Like, even the worst ones are not bad. But the one that I can definitely name for this, for me personally, would be New Super Mario Bros. 2 on the 3DS. It's basically just New Super Mario Bros. On 3DS with a coin gimmick, and has all the same fucking levels. Okay, well maybe they're not like exactly the same levels, but it has like the same fucking themes and everything, and it just feels like recycled shit. So yeah, I'm just not really a fan of it. Like I said, not a broken game, it's not like a piece of shit like some of these other like shitty games I've talked about, like, you know, Bubsy and, you know, fucking Eternal Quest or anything like that, but, you know, it's just another, like, you know, recycled, bland Mario game. Like, honestly, like, I just feel like a lot of, like, the new Super Mario Bros. Games kind of feel like that. Like, and I really wish they kind of gave out, like, a little bit more settings and are a little more interesting rather than just being, oh, the grass zone, oh, the sand zone, oh, the water zone, blah, blah, blah. You know, it's just like Super Mario Bros. 3, but not. So I find those games tend to be very forgettable for me and really just don't do much. Like I said, like, I don't mind them, like, trying to remake, like, new, like, Super Mario Bros. 3 or whatever. It's just as long as they put, like, more interesting set pieces. Like, why don't they make, like, I don't know, like, a medieval level, or, like a Japan-looking level, or, I don't know, like, maybe have, like, the macro zone from, like, you know, Mario 2 and the 6 golden coins. Like, something shit like that. Like, shit like that I fucking want. So there, that's what I think is the worst official Mario game from Nintendo themselves, is that one. Alright, next up it's Mr. Conman123, and he asks, what are my favorite game on each system? You know, that's gonna be really fucking hard just to name, like, every single system out there, so I'll just do kind of, like, the ones that I, like, grew up with, and the ones that I, like, have, like, a lot of, like, experience with. And that's mostly gonna be Nintendo and Sony, so here it goes. For NES, I would say Contra. For Super NES, I would say Donkey Kong Country. For N64, I would say Banjo-Kazooie. Yeah, I would say that. And then for GameCube, I would have to say Super Smash Bros. Melee, just because I played it a shit ton. But there's, like, so many other ones I could mention there. And then for the Wii, oh man, this is where it gets a little hard. I would say maybe for the Wii, like, I would say Fire Emblem, you know, Radiant Dawn, I love that one a lot. And then for the Wii U, fuck, like, what other, like, Wii U game could I mention that hasn't been, like, ported over yet that's still really good? Okay, well, I think I got one. I would probably say Yoshi's Woolly World. I think that's actually a really fun game. Though I think it does have a 3DS version, but nah, fuck it. We'll just say that just to get out of the way. Alright, as for PlayStation, obviously for PS1 I gotta have to say one of the Deception games, so, you know, we all know that. As for PS2, well, I really want to say Shadow Hearts, but, you know, I've already talked to death about that, so I'll just name another one. I'll just say Soul Calibur 3. I don't know, I've gone over how many times I gushed over that fucking game. And then for PS3, I probably might say, Tales of Xillia, maybe? Yeah, I think that's a really good, action RPG, and I do really love it a hell of a lot. In fact, I actually have been tempted of wanting to replay it again, because it has been so long. And then another one that I would say for PS4, I think I'll go with Yakuza 0. Even though I know it's on like PC now, but fuck it, I mostly played it on PS4 and I love it. Oh, as much as I love doing this though, I'm gonna have to get moving on though, because I could definitely do this for like a whole video of like other like consoles and obscure consoles and all that, but we'll just save it for this. Alright, now what would I be considered as the holy grail of my game collection? Well, as I mentioned before, like, it used to be Magic Knight Rayearth on Sega Saturn, but now that I don't have it anymore, I would say now, I would probably say Team Buddies on PS1, and this is another game I definitely would not sell, because this is a game I actually grew up renting back in the day, so I actually do have some nostalgic attachment to it, so therefore I probably won't sell it anytime soon, but yeah, really love that game, but unfortunately it's really fucking expensive, and I don't know if they'll ever put it on like PSN or anything like that, so you might as well just emulate it, and yeah, if you really love multiplayer games, it's really fucking good. And lastly, are there any series and franchises you wanted to get into but couldn't, and why? Well, there's a couple of them I can think of. Probably the biggest one I can say would have to be the Mother series, aka Earthbound. I've actually done a video talking about that in, RPGs that I just struggled to get into. But yes, Earthbound is definitely one of those games because I really want to love it because I do think the story in it's really cool and has some interesting like aspects to it, but I just really don't like the gameplay and it has a lot of like archaic bullshit into it that I'm just not a fan of. So yeah, that's a game that definitely needs a remake actually, but I know they probably won't. And if they do, they're probably still going to make it like the same archaic ass shit probably. One oddball one that I can mention that I just, like, never liked at all was Crackdown on the 360. No, not the Sega Genesis game Crackdown, but the one on the 360 from Microsoft. Yeah, that's a series I just never got into. I played the first game at a friend's place years ago, and I thought it was, like, okay, but, like, then after playing a little bit of the second one, like, I don't know, like, that series, I just never really liked it, and even the third one just kind of looked like shit, so, yeah, that's just a series I just never could get into whatsoever. I mean, it has a cool idea, I guess, but I don't know, I just rather just play fucking Grand Theft Auto, honestly. Oh, and speaking of Grand Theft Auto, and yeah, this one's gonna be a pretty controversial one to mention, but yeah, I couldn't really get into Red Dead Redemption, to be honest, and yeah, it kind of pains me to say that, because I kind of like the idea of it, you know, just GTA but with cowboys, you know, sounds fucking great, right? But for whatever reason, like, every time I play Red Dead Redemption, I always get fucking bored of doing the missions, and I think it's mainly because it has that, like, outdated mission structure where, you know, you just gotta, like, do shit in, like, the way it wants you to do it, and then there's also the fact that, you know, all you do is that you just go from, like, point A to point B on horseback, and it takes fucking forever. And I heard that the second game is, like, even worse with that. So, if I don't even like it in the first game, I don't think I'm gonna like it in the second one. So yeah, that's one that I definitely struggled to get into. I just wish that, like, the missions themselves were a little bit more interesting and had, like, you know, more, like, cool shit going on. Because most of it, like I said, from what I remember playing of it, I was just randomly going on horseback, chasing around a fucking dot on the map, and it would take, like, forever just to get there. So yeah, I think that's gonna piss people off, but oh well, what can you do? But yeah, that's all I'm gonna say on that. Alright, next up is the Button Mappers, and I believe this is Majority who is giving out these questions, because I know he's also a book guy, and these are all book-related questions, but here it goes. So what got me back into the spirit of reading? Well, here's the interesting thing, and I won't try to go too much into this, because it is a bit of a long story, but I'll just say that, I've always liked reading. I always have. Even as a kid, I've always liked reading. But the thing was that, you know, when you had to read books in school, like, they always gave you, like, the fucking, like, the worst shit in school. Like, I remember one time we had to read a book called fucking Stargirl or some bullshit. I don't even remember what the fuck it was about, but it was, like, the most, like, boring-ass shit you can imagine, though. So when you had to read, like, books like that, like, it really just kind of took you out of, like, wanting to read, like, actual good books. At least it did for me for a while, but eventually, though, I've always wanted to get back into reading, like, the shit that I've always wanted to read, you know, stuff like, you know, like Stephen King and Michael Crichton and all that type of stuff, and Lord of the Rings, but, yeah, but of course, you know, nowadays, like, the reason why I kind of got back into it, like, now, is because, well, I just felt like I just kind of needed a change of pace, kind of focus more on like another medium that I kind of put on the back burner for like way too fucking long. And don't worry guys, I'm not like getting like burnt out on gaming and wanting to be like, oh, I'm a book channel now. No. I mean, maybe I might do some book related content at some point in time if anyone's interested, but no, I'm still mostly going to be like gaming and shit, but I just kind of wanted to like kind of focus more on like, you know, every time like before bed, before I go to sleep, like I kind of want to just, you know, want to read a little bit of a book and kind of get some enjoyment out of that, because I feel like that's kind of like the best time for me to like read a book. It's kind of hard for me to get into a book while I'm like out like doing things, you know? So yeah, that kind of sums that up about what got me back in the spirit of reading, is that I just kind of want to focus on a little bit more of that. And plus, like I always said, there's a lot of books out there that I've always wanted to read, but just never got around to it. And I always said like, oh, I just don't have time for it. Well, now I'm actually trying to make time for it. And as for what books am I reading now? Well, as I'm recording this, the book that I'm actually going to be reading is Misery from Stephen King. I actually did pick up the movie of it recently, but I actually have seen the movie years ago with my dad, and I always thought the movie was really great, and also had a really cool idea of it that I've always liked, and I've always was curious to see what the book was like, so I'm actually going to start reading that. And yeah, maybe after that, I don't know, maybe I might read one of the Michael Crichton books that I've gotten recently. I might read one of those, because I've always wanted to get into his stuff too, like I've mentioned before. So that's kind of my book plan as of right now. Of course, when I'm recording this, it might be slightly different by the time I'm uploading it, but we'll see. I mean, you'll probably know, I'll tell you. And finally, what are some of my all-time favorite books? Well, I can definitely say that I actually have read both The Hobbit and Fellowship of the Ring back in the day, and I definitely do remember really enjoying those a hell of a lot. But it has been a very long time since I've read those, so I'm actually gonna like reread those, since there's quite a lot of stuff that I kinda don't remember, and most of the shit that I do remember is mostly just from the movies. Another one that I also do remember reading in high school, and this is one that I can actually say was actually fucking good, and that was I, Robot from Isaac Asimov. Yeah, I actually like forgot that he wrote the book to that, but yeah, no, that was actually a really good ass book. It was all about the interactions between humans and robots and the morality of them all. You know, just like the fucking Will Smith movie, but of course the book is like a lot different, and also like a lot better as well. And I also remember it not being very long either, so it was actually a pretty good book to read at that time, and it wasn't like super complicated either. In fact, that's another one I actually would like to revisit again. And as for the last one that I'll mention are all my all-time favorite books, and I know some people might cringe at this one just because, you know, it's a part of a franchise that's really huge, and it's also, you know, an author who like fucking sucks ass now, and that was, I probably would say the third Harry Potter book, Prisoner of Azkaban. Yeah, I used to read the Harry Potter books back in the day, and I gotta say, that one was probably like the best one. Either that one or Goblet of Fire was really good, but I think Prisoner of Azkaban was probably like my favorite though. But that's all I can really say for now when it comes to my all-time favorite books that I can think of offhand. Of course, you know, there's a lot of other ones that I've been getting recently that I've been really wanting to read for, like, the longest time that I really can't wait to get to, so maybe you ask me this question, like, I don't know, maybe like a year or two from now, like, this answer will be, like, totally different. And next we have is Mad Matt the Heavy Metal Mecha Pilot, and he asks, what are some songs from metal bands you think would be a great opener for an 80s style mecha anime? Now this is a pretty badass question, and there's quite a few I can think of. One that comes to mind is Hyberia's Defying the Rules album. Like, there's a lot of songs on that album that would definitely fit a pretty awesome mecha anime for sure. Another one that I can also say would be really kick-ass would be a lot of songs from Mari Hamada. Yeah, Mari Hamada, yeah, she's a fucking great singer. I really love a lot of her stuff. Very, like, heavy metal shit. Like, really good shit. If you want, like, really good Japanese metal with a female lead, like, that's some really good-ass shit that I can highly recommend. And yeah, a lot of that stuff I can definitely see fitting for some, like, mecha animes for sure. Hell, a lot of it can actually fit really good for a lot of animes in general. Also, the band Anthem can definitely put out some really awesome shit that I think would fit for a mecha anime as well. Alright, and as for your last question, what mecha designer do you think has, like, the mecha chops for heavy metal mechs? And, of course, he gave us some examples, and, I know when it comes to, like, the names of, like, designers for mechs, I'm never really good at remembering of, like, who is, like, who. But after looking up the names that you suggested real quickly, I can definitely say that Koichi Ohata would definitely be up there because, I mean, for one, he did shit like MD Geist and fucking Genocyber. I mean, that right there is pretty heavy metal as fuck, so I mean, that already has to be like the best there is, right? And finally, this is the final question in all of this video, and yes, this is an hour long already, and this last question comes from PXN Gaming. Yeah, I sound like I'm kind of tired at the moment, but that's because I've just been, like, talking, like, non-stop, so his last question is, in modern gaming era, what region do you believe is bringing us the best games? And, well, in my opinion, and, you know, my opinion really hasn't changed that much from, like, back then and today, but I really do think that the Asian market, you know, with, like, Japan and whatnot, definitely brings us the best, honestly. I mean, I've always, like, loved Japanese games the most anyways. Not to say that I don't like anything from North America or Europe. I mean, there definitely are some good games that come out of there. Like, you know, for example, like, you know, I love, like, Mountain Blade. Like, that's like a European-made game, and I love that, and fuck. You know, Europe is just really good with making a lot of, like, weird, like, sim games that you can just, like, fuck around with so much shit. You know, games like Mountain Blade and, you know, like, Roller Coaster Tycoon and all that. Like, they're good with shit like that. But with Japan, though, I would say, like, the thing I just love about, like, the games is that, well, not only do I just tend to love, like, a lot of, like, their art styles and their music soundtracks, but also, a lot of their games just have, like, a very interesting personality to them that I think, like, you can't really get that often with, like, the others. Biggest example of that would be, like, people like Suda51. Like, that's a dude that is just, like, that puts a lot of his personality into his games, and it's just really cool and interesting to kind of learn about him through that. And yeah, as for the quality gap significant, yeah, I would say it kind of is. I mean, like I said, like, I do like games from North America and Europe, but I think Japan, like, there's just so much that I just really love, like, a lot. Like, pretty much, like, my top 10 favorite games of all time. Like, most of them are from there, I'm pretty sure, if I remember right. So, there we have it. We are done with the Q&A of 2022, and yeah, this was actually a lot of fun to do. I mean, I knew it would be, and I always enjoyed doing these, but I just don't do them that often, just because, you know, they take a long time to do. So, yeah, thank you guys for giving out these questions for me to answer them. I hope I answered them decently. I hope. If not, I mean, you know, we can always talk it out in the comments. Maybe I'll probably give out something better than I gave in the video. You never know. But, yeah, no, I just always like doing this type of shit. I just think it's fun. I mean, it almost feels like doing a stream, but not almost. But, anyways, yeah. That'll take us to the end of this video because it's over an hour long. So, thanks for watching and commenting, and have yourselves a great day, and stay tuned for more content.